Miami taught me one thing. If a building breathes with access cards, it remembers every lie better than people do. My name's Alex. I keep other people's systems from falling over for a living. I'm the guy who gets a ping at 2 a.m. because a printer queue in Omaha decided it was sentient. I like logs. I like timestamps. I like when reality lines up with the record. That preference used to apply to servers and switches. Then it started applying to the person I thought I'd marry. 2 months after we split, my ex, Kira, knocked on my door in the hallway with the fake marble and the foyer orchid that's never once been alive. I heard the knock and knew it was her before I looked. She knocks like she takes photos for Instagram, too many times, too fast, to make sure it landed. I opened. She smelled like bergamot and pool chlorine. Her hair was damp the way it gets after our rooftop nights in the hot tub. She didn't ask to come in, she just said it. "I'm pregnant, Alex," she said. "It's yours." If I'm honest, there was a version of me that wanted to hug her just because the words meant connection, but the other version had been trained by 2 years of chaos to ask for documentation. "Congratulations," I said, flat. "Do you have anything to show me?" The pause was half a second too long. She produced her phone, turned the screen, and showed me a sonogram. It was the classic, grainy, black and white like static, caught a fish. The image had a clean border, like it had been exported. I didn't know what to look for. A date? A patient name? There was a cropped corner where all of that would live. She scrolled to a calendar app with pink dots and did math out loud in a voice you use on toddlers or cashiers. 10 weeks, she said, which puts it right in the last week before we broke up. You remember that weekend? We had the argument about your hours, and then we made up and ordered Thai. I remembered. I remembered because I remember everything, and because she remembers selectively. That weekend we did not order Thai. I did. She fell asleep on the couch and woke up angry that I ate without her. I didn't say that. I stared at her face and thought about how many times we'd fought over left behind details and how those details always somehow became my fault. "I need time," I said. "This is big." She leaned against the doorframe and bit her lip like she was waiting for a verdict and had already written it. "I just thought you'd want to know. I'm keeping it. I want you to be involved." Then she reached for my phone like we were still together and she was allowed to scroll my life. I watched her thumb hover over my lock screen like muscle memory. I moved my hand out of the way. Her face snapped closed the way a laptop does when you slam it to stop the fan from screaming. She stepped back. "Call me," she said, and walked to the elevators. The moment the stainless doors swallowed her, my apartment felt smaller, like the walls had been pulled in by 2 feet. I looked at the sonogram photo where it now sat in my message thread, already sent by her with a heart. I didn't know where the image had come from, but I knew what to do with any image. I pulled the file into a window, zoomed until the pixels squared off, cropped to the corner of the left border, and ran a reverse image search. It's not magic, just pattern matching. It gave me 2 matches within a minute. One was a stock sonogram used by a prenatal blog to talk about first trimester vitamins. The other was a Pinterest board called Baby Dreaming, with the same exact image crowded among gender reveal cakes. The board's owner had overlaid script text on the version Kira sent me. "Our little bean," but the original was identical down to a small smear of static that looked like a comma in the bottom right. I closed the window and stared at the black rectangle of my TV like it would say something back. "I should tell you about Kira. We met at a friend of a friend party in Wynwood in a warehouse that had been 3 separate startups in 20 months. Someone put a neon sign above a bar that said something aspirational about grit. She wore a white dress you only wear if nothing in your life spills. She told me she freelanced and designed for boutique brands and made jokes about bootstrap founders naming their dogs after fundraising rounds. She asked me questions and didn't wait for the end of answers. I thought she was sunlight. Everyone else thought so too. The first year, I chased sunlight, planned dates, made her mellow playlists, pretended not to notice when she borrowed stories that didn't happen to impress people she'd just met. The second year, a pattern emerged. There would be a party or a post or a person. There would be a fight, there would be a makeup, there would be a new plan. Somewhere under all of that lived money problems I didn't get to see and a need for attention that drank faster than I could pour. The last 3 months before the breakup, she got close with a cluster of people in our building, the way she gets close to anything. Fast, loud, and with sustained eye contact. There is a certain kind of wealthy neighbor in a Miami high-rise who loves to be adjacent to chaos for the story of it. They lean on the pool bar with the wedding ring tan line and buy rounds for 20-somethings. One of them was a man named Sebastian. He introduced himself to everyone like his name was a brand that guaranteed something. He had the tan you get when you own indoor lighting that simulates being on a yacht. He wore unbuttoned linen and a watch that cost as much as a graduate degree. He said he handled high net worth transactions, which is a way to say real estate without ever imagining drywall. He lived on 47, where the air supposedly smells richer. Kira had a theory that proximity meant destiny. If you live near successful people and eat near successful people and tag the same locations as successful people, you will become one by absorption. She started tagging the pool at hours I never saw her there. She started saying we when she meant they. She kept saying, "We're doing a boat day," and laughing when I said I had a maintenance window and couldn't come. I wasn't jealous of any one man, more jealous of the feed she curated where I didn't exist. When she knocked with the word pregnant, we had been 2 months apart. That much was true. The part where I was the father was an assertion. Another assertion was the 10 weeks. That had a timestamp you could check against a calendar that had not once lied to me. I texted my friend Mateo. But Mateo works the front desk in our lobby. He's the one who knows which package belongs to which resident, even when Amazon prints 3 different names and a shrug on the same label. He is, more importantly, Switzerland, which is to say, he sees everything and picks sides with the building's rules. I asked if he was free that night. He sent a thumbs up. He also sent a photo of a donut box because he knows me and knows I bring donut bribes when I need a favor I can justify as policy. At 9, I went downstairs. The lobby is all glass and big plants and a kind of ambient music that's designed to sound like nothing. One wall holds the security screens. Most are split into quadrants. You can see the elevator lobbies, the loading dock, the garage entrance, the glass doors that get stuck when it rains too hard. There is a logbook open at the desk with a pen attached to it by a silver chain. The chain makes a noise like a tiny leash when it's moved. We chatted about nothing. I put the donut box down. Mateo raised an eyebrow because he knows donut math. 1 box means paperwork, 2 means gossip, 3 means someone's getting evicted. I said the words I needed him to hear that made all of this legitimate. "I've been meaning to ask management for a security audit," I said, casual. "There have been a couple of late-night tailgates through the garage and I wouldn't want anything to happen on our watch. I'm happy to do some legwork, cross-check times, help you write it up. Also, wild unrelated question, do you know if Sebastian on 47 has any guest restrictions? People keep asking me, and I'd like to be accurate." Mateo's face didn't change. He flipped the logbook like you flip a coin in court. He looked at the column for guest name and the column for resident visited. He tapped his finger 3 times on the paper in a rhythm that meant, "I'm thinking," or "I'm pretending to think so, this isn't weird." "You know management loves outside help when it saves them work," he said. "If you want to pull the elevator reports, I'll print. And Sebastian is on the list of units that requested stricter after-hours access. No tailgating, no unregistered guests past midnight. On paper." "On paper," I repeated. "On paper." He logged into the software that controls everything that moves a person up or down. It's normal to pull reports when something breaks. It's also normal to pull reports when you need to prove that nothing broke. We set the range for the last 12 weeks. The printer started coughing out pages with table grids and timestamps. There were columns for unit, fob ID, reader, and time. There were reader names like Garage Gate, Lobby West, Elevator 1, Elevator 2, Elevator 2, Elevator 3, Elevator 3, Elevator 3. There was a field for guest fob and another for courtesy access, which is what we give to delivery people when they need to get to a floor they have no business on. Mateo stacked pages and slid them into a folder like a magician showing both sides of the deck. We cross-referenced the times with the handwritten visitor logs. Something happens to your chest when the first piece of paper confirms the shape of a fear you didn't want to name. It isn't a drop or a rise, it's a tightening, like a strap you didn't notice someone had buckled around you gets cinched 1 notch. Her name appeared 4 times on the visitor log within 1 week. If I were generous, I'd say she came to see me. The problem was the apartment number listed was not mine. It was 4712 Sebastian's. There are lots of reasons an ex might visit a neighbor. None of them line up well with a pregnancy timeline and a cropped sonogram from Pinterest. "Could be a friend," Mateo said, "because he is fair even when it hurts. Could be a party with other people there." "Could be," I said. We looked at the elevator entries. On each of those nights, a guest fob activated elevator 2 at 12,042 a.m., 1,009 a.m., 2,003 a.m., and 12,058 a.m. The elevator took 2 stops, First the lobby, then floor 47. The fob was assigned as courtesy penthouses, which meant a resident had come down to collect the guest and swipe them up. I thought about the weekend, Kira claimed. I opened my calendar, counted weeks backward, did the math. You can lie about many things. The distance between a Thursday in April and a Friday in June is not one of them. Her 10-week claim placed conception in a week when she was tagging a restaurant opening in Miami Beach at 1 a.m. and then an after party I wasn't invited to. The night after that, Sebastian posted a boomerang of champagne flutes, off-frame faces, the Brickell skyline a smear. In the reflection on the window, there was a woman's silhouette with hair like hers. Mateo watched my face and did the thing good front desk people do when they know they're part of someone's worst day. He lowered his voice even though it was already just the two of us. "You didn't hear any of this from me," he said. "But if you want a real audit, talk to Dario." "Building security Dario?" I asked. "Dario, who used to do stadium security," he said. "He lives in the cheap seats of human behavior. He sees everything and writes down enough of it that you can prove the rest." I thanked him and took the folder. The elevator up felt longer than usual, even though these are the fastest elevators in 3 zip codes. I sat at my kitchen counter with the folder open and the air conditioner doing its best imitation of weather. I took out a pen because pens make you feel like you're doing something decisive, even if all you're doing is drawing boxes around truths. I circled dates. I lined them up with screenshots I printed from Kira's stories. The night she tagged date night with my fave, with a heart, she had left my apartment earlier telling me she was going to her friend Jordana's to talk about a brand she wanted to pitch. At 1:19 a.m., a guest fob went to 47. At 3:01 a.m., the garage system recorded a plate exiting that belonged to Kira's car, which is how I learned something else about our building. The garage cameras capture plates more accurately than any human eye. The next day, I called Dario. Dario's office is down a hall that smells like fresh paint because it gets fresh paint every time a board member wants to feel useful. He looks like he was born to ask belligerent drunk people to leave quietly. He keeps 2 screens full of cameras on at all times, not because he's watching them, but because it's an ambient reminder to everyone that they are in a place with eyes. "What's the problem?" he asked. Not rude, efficient. I told him I wanted to help them with a no-cost audit for the board since there had been a few late-night tailgates in the garage. It was true. It was also a way to get him to hand me the raw data without making this about my personal life. "You and Mateo," he said, "always thinking like this place is a bank." I smiled. "That's why the fees are so high." He snorted and pulled up the elevator logs with the speed of a man who doesn't need to look at the keyboard. He filtered by guest fob and after hours and penthouses. He exported a CSV, and I loved him more in that moment than I had loved anyone in weeks. We could hear the printer chewing through a ream. He tapped the stack when it emerged and handed it to me like he was passing over test results. "You want the garage LPR too?" he asked. "If you have the last 12 weeks, I said. He printed those too. Each page had a tiny camera thumbnail near the plate number and timestamp. It listed vehicle type, direction, gate, and unit if registered. We looked together down the columns. We found Kira's plate multiple times after 1 a.m. exiting. We found it once entering at 12,036 a.m. without a resident tag, which means she had to be buzzed in by someone already inside. There's a field in the software called Gate Open Reason. Next to that entry under reason, it said guest entry, granted by 4712. Dario didn't ask me what this was really about. He shrugged in that professional way that says, "I don't need to know." He slid a stapler across the desk. He asked if I wanted to email some of the data to myself too. I said I did. He set me up at the console and let me search for any other patterns I cared to find. The patterns were everywhere once you decided to see them. She had rest days on her fitness app on nights the elevator carried her to the top. She had client meetings that started exactly 10 minutes after his car pulled into the garage. She had spontaneous sunsets that lined up with photos from his balcony where the railing design was distinct enough to identify in reverse image searches from real estate listings. She had girls' nights where there were no girls in the reflected surfaces. I am not proud of what I felt. It wasn't righteous. It wasn't clean. I felt the heavy, slow anger that makes you forget to eat. When I got back upstairs, I did eat. I microwaved leftover rice and stood barefoot in the kitchen staring at a page of elevator entries while chewing. The building hummed. Somewhere above me, a blender turned ice to slush. Somewhere below me, a dog barked at nothing. Kira texted at midnight. "Are you okay?" she wrote. "I know it's a lot." I stared at the bubble and watched the dots that said she was typing again and then not typing. I typed and deleted, "Who is the father?" 3 times. It felt pointless to ask a question I could answer with better probability than she would provide. Instead, I wrote, "We'll need a DNA test. Also, can you send the original sonogram with uncropped info or the clinic details?" The dots never reappeared. She didn't reply that night. At 2:07 a.m., my elevator log page recorded a guest fob going to 47. By morning, Kira had sent a new photo. The sonogram now had a patient name, KII All. The date mileage had been replaced by glittery stickers. The clinic name was truncated. She wrote under it, "Sorry, I cropped the other one for privacy." I wrote, "Clinic name?" She wrote, "Why are you being hostile?" I wrote, "Because you sent me a Pinterest image last night." She wrote, "You're paranoid." I wrote, "I'm precise." She didn't write back. I wasn't going to talk to Sebastian. I have a code about fights. I prefer official channels. But I did go to the pool on Saturday at exactly the hour he usually held court. I sat with a paperback and something that looked like a drink you could afford only if you make more than me. He arrived in a shirt he didn't plan to keep buttoned. He dropped into the pool without acknowledging any of the nods from the group that forms around him like minnows around a shark. He did 3 short laps and came up near where I sat. "You're Alex," he said, as if he was informing me. "We have to do a boat day before the summer fully gives up." "I'm busy on weekends," I said. "Everyone says that until the right invite," he said, and swam away. Kira appeared 20 minutes later wearing a cover-up that had never seen a cover. It didn't immediately refuse to provide. She looked at me once and then didn't again. I watched her lie on a lounger 3 seats away and laugh at something Sebastian said. She didn't come over. She didn't wave. If we were in a movie, there would be a shot of my hands gripping the book too hard. In reality, I turned a page and had to turn it back because I had read nothing. That evening, I took the folder to my friend Rena. Rena is one of 3 people I trust with the raw footage of my life. She's a nurse. She tells people rough truths and then puts the blanket on them anyway. We spread the pages over her kitchen table. Her cat tried to make a bed in the pile. She moved the cat and started circling with a red pen like a teacher. She said 10 weeks, she said. So conception falls here or here. If you hadn't had sex those days, then the math is simple. Did you? I didn't like how clinical it felt to answer. Maybe I needed it to be clinical. "No," I said, "not those days." "Then science says no," she said. "But I get wanting more than math. You should ask for the clinic." "You did." "She didn't give it. That's data too." "She will say I'm being controlling," I said. "She can say that," Rena said. "Either way, the truth will be here when the argument is over." "What do I do?" I asked, although the question had an answer baked in. "You document without malice," she said. "You set up a test if there's ever a birth. Until then, you set boundaries. You do not get baited into fights where the point is to keep you engaged. And if this guy is married, you consider telling the person who needs to know, not as drama, as information." I hadn't thought the married thing through beyond a vague sense of ooze. It is one thing to be cheated on. It is another to be attached as a prop to someone else's cheating. I asked Mateo discreetly if he knew whether Sebastian had a wife. He shrugged the way people do when they know something, but also know it isn't public knowledge. "He has a ring sometimes," he said. "He has a woman who shouts on the phone in Spanish in the garage. Could be a sister, could be a wife, could be an ex who won't stop calling. I don't track soap operas, I just log who came and who left." Kira knocked again on Sunday. I didn't open. I answered through the door. "We can talk in the lobby," I said. She sighed theatrically, loud enough that the sound carried into the hallway camera's pickup range. "You being so cold," she said. "I miss the version of you that believed in us." "The version of you I believed in didn't exist," I said. "If you want to talk about the baby, text me the clinic name. If you want to talk about anything else, there's nothing else to talk about." "I'm scared," she said, smaller. For a second, the memory of the first year pressed on my chest. Her in my kitchen in socks, eating cold pizza and laughing at how my playlists had too many songs about cars. Her face when she fell asleep on my shoulder on the water taxi back from Miami Beach. Her look when she got her first real client check deposited and let me take a photo of her with a paper airplane made from the envelope. Memory is a liar. It edits out the parts that hurt to keep you safe enough to walk into the parts that hurt again. "Then stop lying," I said, and walked to the elevator. I went to the front desk because I knew I needed an adult, and in our building, That adult wears a blazer and keeps a key ring with too many old keys. I told Mateo I wanted to set up a meeting with the HOA board to present a security audit of after-hours guest access. I said it formally. I sent a formal email. I opened a spreadsheet. I annotated nights when guest fobs were used outside policy. I included my own unit once where I'd come in late from the airport and buzzed a friend at 1005 a.m. to make it clear this wasn't targeted. I noted that multiple entries originated from 4712, which is information, not an accusation. I attached 3 PDF exports. I proposed a date for the meeting. I brought 2 boxes of donuts. The board president wrote back the same day. Her name is Nora. She is a retired attorney who misses having a reason to be terrifying. She thanked me for my civic-mindedness and set the meeting for a week out. She keyed Dario and management and the building council. She added in parentheses that 4712 had recently been the source of noise complaints and that it would be good to address patterns across the building for fairness. I fought the urge to ask what recently meant. Fairness is a word that means 2 opposite things depending on who uses it. That night, Kira posted stories. It was a baby name poll. It was 2 names I didn't like and one that belonged to my grandfather. She put a heart next to that one, like a small theft of history. Someone DM'd me screenshots because the internet makes everyone your neighbor. I put my phone face down and went for a run in air so wet it felt like I was drinking through my skin. When I got back, there was an envelope under my door. Inside was a printout of a lab order for prenatal blood work. There was no clinic logo. The date was the same day as the Pinterest sonogram. In the bottom left corner, someone had written, "Ask for Dr. H. Kira's handwriting loops when she lies." The H looped. I did the thing I do when code won't run. I slept 6 hours, showered, put on a clean shirt, and wrote down exactly what I knew and exactly what I didn't. Knew multiple after-hours visits to 47 by Kira with escort. Knew reverse image search flagged the first sonogram as stock. Knew she refused to provide clinic information. Knew I had not had sex with her during the window she claimed. Didn't know whether she was actually pregnant. Didn't know whether Sebastian was married. Didn't know whether this would ruin someone I didn't hate enough to ruin. On Wednesday, I took a late lunch and walked to a coffee place off Brickell where people talk like deals or weather. I picked a table where I could see the door. 10 minutes in, Sebastian walked in with a woman who had the kind of posture wealthy men develop when they're asked to sit still. She was beautiful in the way people think a painting is beautiful because they were told it is. She ordered and paid without checking a price. She wore a ring that made the countertop look dull. They did not touch. He stood back from her in the way men do when anyone could be watching. I watched him put his hand on her lower back as they left. Husband and wife or client and broker. The gesture did not settle it. That night, Kira called me instead of texting. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript wrote itself on my screen as she spoke. It said she wanted to find a way to co-parent that wasn't hostile. It said she was sorry about how things ended but excited about a future where we put the baby first. It said she had talked to a lawyer who explained she could file for temporary support while the paternity test was pending. The word support went through me like a pin through a balloon. I could feel my body collapse around it. I'd breathe okay under pressure. I do not breathe well under threat dressed up as an invitation to mature conversation. I forwarded the voicemail to myself and saved it in a folder called Legal. I wrote down the time and date. I replied with one sentence, "Please put any requests in writing through counsel." It felt dramatic. It felt necessary. The night before the HOA meeting, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch and watched the glow of the city move across the ceiling in squares. I imagined the meeting. I imagined Kira showing up. I imagined Sebastian showing up with lawyers and a smile that didn't move. I imagined the board doing what boards do, which is play the role of fairness until fairness hurts a donor. I got up and printed everything again. I highlighted not the names but the policy statements. After-hours access must be registered in advance. Residents may not escort guests repeatedly in violation of quiet hours. Courtesy fobs are for single-use delivery and vendor access, not social calls. I wrote a script for myself. The way you write a script for a demo. If I say these words in this order, the truth will be visible even if no one wants to look. In the morning, Mateo texted me that Nora had asked security to bring the guest book. She had also asked building council to attend. He added, "Just so you know," he added a donut emoji and then apologized for the emoji because he knows I hate them in serious conversations. The meeting was set for 7 in the event room with the bad carpet and good view. The room lives just below the pool and just above the floors where people like Sebastian have terraces. The chairs are always arranged like they're waiting for a wedding that refuses to begin. There's a projector that works best when you don't need it. There's a table where someone always puts Costco cookies on a plastic platter, unwrapped so that they dry out into edible coasters by the 30-minute mark. I got there early enough to watch the sun hit the roofs of the smaller buildings and make them look temporarily expensive. Dario was there, arranging cables like a man who knows which end goes where because he's used to saving other people's presentations. Matteo put out name placards like he was seating a gala. Nora came in with a binder thick enough to do damage. People trickled in. Board members with notes and faces they practice in mirrors. Residents with grievances that dated back to construction defects. I heard them whisper about leaks in hallways that smelled like weed. I heard one talk about a dog that barked in 2308, like the dog was a person who had wronged them in high school. At 6005, a woman walked in I had never seen except in reflections and in the posture of a man who clues to her presence by his distance. She wore a navy dress that fit like a plan. Her hair was pulled back like she was tired of it getting in her way. She pulled a chair in the front row. She placed a neat stack of papers on her lap and looked up as if she'd been told there would be a test. She is the one I would later learn is Sebastian's wife. Kira did not come at 6005. She came at 7008. A calculated late that lands you in a room when all eyes turn and also when no one will stop the proceedings to ask you to sign in. She sat in the back near the iced water dispenser and crossed one leg over the other with practiced ease. She held her phone face up like a talisman. Her belly was flat. Nora called the meeting to order. She did the ritual words about community and rules and the reasons we all live in a place like this and not in a cottage where you set your own trash out and then fight raccoons. She nodded to me. Alex has prepared materials regarding after-hours access patterns, she said. We appreciate residents who take initiative. I stood, gave my name, my unit number, my profession in the most boring terms possible. I started with policy. I explained how courtesy fobs work, how they're intended for vendors, not regular guests. I explained how after-hours access increases liability and decreases sleep for people who don't want to hear laughter in hallways at 2. I did not say anyone's name. I did not have to. Dario pulled up the first slide. It was a simple chart, nights of the week on the bottom, number of after-hours guest fob uses on the side. The bars were low, Monday to Wednesday. They spiked Thursday to Saturday like an EKG of bad decisions. There was a second overlay that showed which units were responsible for escorting. The color legend didn't need labels. One color dominated the last 4 weeks. Do you know the sound a room makes when everyone is trying to pretend they aren't paying attention to the same thing at the same time? It's a silence with a whistle in it. You could hear the air conditioner sigh. I heard Kira shift in her chair. I heard the scratch of pen on paper from the front row where the woman in navy was writing in a hand that prints like it's ready to be entered into evidence. Nora asked if I could show a specific date as an example of what the logs capture. I could. I asked Dario to pull up the night of the fundraiser gala the building had hosted last month on the rooftop, the night the fireworks went off after midnight, and the police came and the board shrugged it off as a donation opportunity. He brought up the table. It showed courtesy penthouses at 12,042 a.m., 1,009 a.m., 2,003 a.m., entries to the same floor, exits at 3,003 a.m., entries to the same floor, exits. I highlighted the gate open reason. It said, again, guest entry, granted by 4712. I didn't turn around, but I could feel Kira trying on expressions like jackets, offended, bored, betrayed, above it all, scared. The last one fit. I didn't enjoy saying this out loud. I didn't enjoy pushing a train I knew had to roll. Nora turned to the room. We will be following up with units that are responsible for repeated after-hours access for non-residents, she said, voice smooth enough to skate on. There will be fines as provided in the bylaws. There can also be suspension of amenity privileges if repeated violations occur. Of course, we welcome context if there are extenuating circumstances. She looked at the woman in navy in the front row as if the word context had been invented for her. The woman raised her hand. I have a question, she said. Her voice had that subtle, expensive school cadence where sarcasm lives and breathes. When a unit is responsible for this pattern, do you inform their spouse? The room made a polite, hungry sound, the way a room makes when a question is both obvious and forbidden. Nora's lips pressed, pleased and concerned at once. We are not in the business of personal relationships, Nora said. We are in the business of building policy. I was told by staff that security logs are available to residents upon request for safety concerns, the woman said. I have a safety concern. She didn't look at Kira. She didn't look at me. She looked at Dario and then at Nora. She placed a card on the table with a firm finger. It had a law firm's name on it. It had a last name that matched Sebastian's. I'm registered as a resident of 4712, she said. I've been traveling. I'll be requesting the last 12 weeks of entries and video associated with that unit's door and the elevator landing. And I'll be asking the board to consider a policy where spouses are notified when a unit is in repeated violation after midnight. Kira stood up then, quick, the chair legs scraping. This is harassment, she said too loudly. You can't just put my personal life on a projector. I turned. She was shaking in a way that did not read as fear so much as frustration that the script had gone off page. It's not your personal life, I said, finally breaking the rule I had set for myself. It's the building's logs. She pointed at me like we were in the middle of one of our old fights and the rest of the room was furniture. You're doing this to punish me, she said. You always want to control everything. I want to control the difference between truth and story, I said. I'm tired of living inside someone else's caption. Nora rapped her pen on the table, a tiny gavel. Let's maintain order, she said. We'll move to resident comments after the presentation. Alex, you have one more slide? I did. It was the one that would connect dates like string between thumbtacks. It was the timeline overlay of her public posts with the guest fob uses and the garage exits. It was clean and inexorable and looked like the kind of graph you put in front of a client who wants to know why the system keeps crashing at the same time every night. I clicked to the slide. The lines appeared. In the back of the room, Kira's phone lit up with a call from a contact labeled Dr. H, the same letter from the scribbled lab order. She stared at it. She declined. In the front, the woman in navy folded her hands and waited like someone watching a wave about to arrive. The woman in navy did not blink at the lines on the screen. I realized in the stretched out pause that she had seen a lot of charts in her life and had learned not to be impressed by a single one. She uncapped a pen, then capped it again like she was giving the room a chance to step back from the cliff. Nora cleared her throat and said, "We would take brief comments." She said the word brief the way you tell a child not to splash near a socket. A man from the 6th floor complained about the door slamming on windy nights. Someone from the 30s asked for more bike racks. It was small talk wearing a tie. Everyone was pretending the chart behind me wasn't pointing a neon arrow at a penthouse. Then the event room doors opened again, and the air pressure changed the way it does when an elevator stops on your floor. Sebastian walked in like he owned a camera trained on him. He swapped the linen shirt for a navy blazer that matched the woman in the front row, but not her mood. He shook hands with 2 board members without waiting for their hands to be offered, then took a seat near the aisle, 3 rows back, directly in Kira's line of sight. She flinched, an involuntary half-inch recoil you only notice when you have memorized the way someone sits. Nora nodded to him with all the warmth of a judge acknowledging a late filing. "We're in comments," she said. "State your name and unit if you wish to be recognized." Sebastian smiled like the lights agreed with him. "Sebastian L., 4712, he said. "A couple of notes. First, thank you to Alex for the diligence. We all appreciate safety. Second, context matters. I often host clients who are not residents. Late hours are part of global business. The courtesy fob system is inadequate for a building like ours. I'm happy to sponsor a proposal to modernize the policy so we're not punishing success." He paused for the room to applaud something that hadn't happened. It didn't applaud! Dario's eyebrow performed a private shrug. Nora said, "The policy is the policy until the policy changes." She had scary teacher energy. "We will be enforcing it. If you wish to propose revisions, you're free to do so at the next rules committee." The woman in navy finally turned and looked at Sebastian the way surgeons look at a tumor on an image. Curious, clinical, already planning the approach. "Global business," she said, voice sugar-free. "Does global business typically require escorting the same woman into the elevator 4 nights in a week? Is global business pregnant?" It was a clean throw. Even people who came to complain about bike racks leaned forward. Sebastian's smile twitched. "Personal attacks are inappropriate," he said. "Personal patterns are relevant," she said. "I'm your wife. They are personally relevant to me." It wasn't a reveal so much as the removal of a curtain everyone could see through. The room went quiet in a new way. Kira stared at the floor as if it would open and offer her a different meeting in a different building with a story where she was the main character and no one else had lines. Nora lifted her hands like a conductor returning an orchestra to the piece at hand. "We are not adjudicating marriages," she said. "We are enforcing security policy. Alex, thank you for the presentation. Management will follow up with relevant units." Meeting adjourned. It was a graceful exit if you liked 50-car pileups. The projector blinked to a screensaver of ocean waves. People stood in the scattered half-frenzy of a fire drill where no one smells smoke, but everyone wants to look like they know where the stairs are. Dario started coiling cables like a fisherman who knows how to work a net. Mateo collected name placards. The Costco cookies had developed a skin. I went to gather my papers. The woman in navy reached me first. Up close, she had a face you would trust with painkillers after surgery and a voice that suggested she would not let you overdose. "Can I have a copy of your timeline?" she asked. She didn't say please. She didn't need to. "Yes," I said. "Take all of it." The words came out too fast. I steadied myself. I can email. Whatever's useful." She slid a card across the table. It had her full name and a firm. "Email the PDFs to that," she said, "and anything else you have. I won't ask you to say more here." Kira materialized on my other side like someone who has learned to navigate rooms by gravity. "Alex, can we talk?" she asked. "Not here." "We are here," I said. "What would change if we were in a hallway instead of a room with fluorescent lights?" Her eyes flashed in a way that once meant fight and now meant fear. "I can't believe you did this to me," she said. "Do you understand the stress you're putting on my body? On the baby? You have no idea what you're causing." There is a form of anger that makes you want to set everything on fire just to see what burns last. This was not that. This was cool and flat like a lab bench. "You sent me a stock sonogram," I said. "You dodged clinic details. You showed up here while your phone was ringing with a contact labeled Dr. H. You escorted yourself to a penthouse 4 times the week you claim you conceived. If you are actually pregnant, you know how to prove it safely. If you are not, stop saying there's a baby between us like it's a weapon." She pushed tears to the edge of her eyes like someone turning a faucet handle. They did not fall. "You always wanted proof more than you wanted me," she said. "That's how wanting you could have worked," I said. "With proof." Sebastian approached with the smoothness of a man who talks to prosecutors and pool bartenders the same way. "Let's take this offline," he said, palm out like he was directing traffic out of a crash. He positioned his body between Kira and the woman in navy like a bridge that has to hold in a storm. The woman didn't move. "No," she said. "Online is good. Online leaves a record." Kira took a half step toward Sebastian, stopped when the woman looked at the space between them as if that space owed her rent. "This is toxic," Kira said. "I'm leaving." She did, quick steps, heels complaining about carpet. The door thumped behind her. The air settled. The woman turned back to me. "I'll send you a litigation hold request," she said, business returning to her voice like a pen finding paper. "Don't delete anything. Emails, texts, screenshots, logs. If management gives you pushback, copy me. Thank you." She started to walk away, then paused and looked back. "For what it's worth," she said, "I don't know if I hate you or want to hire you." "Both is common," I said. "It was a joke, but it wasn't funny." She nodded anyway, like I had passed a test no one had told me we were taking. After they left, the room deflated into the sound of a vacuum cleaner somewhere in the building. Dario handed me a manila envelope with more printouts than I had asked for, which I took to mean he had lived enough lives to know you always need the extra page you didn't think about. "You handled yourself," he said. It sounded like approval and a warning. "Thanks for the CSB," I said, "and for not asking me questions you don't want to know answers to." "I like my job," he said. "My job is cameras and doors. People think that's about seeing everything. It's about not watching the wrong 5 minutes too many times." Back upstairs, my apartment smelled like paper. It's a smell booksellers love. When it lives with you for a week, you stop noticing, and then you leave for an hour and come back, and it smacks you with 1,000 small facts. I stacked the facts in a drawer. I went to brush my teeth. My face looked older in a way that didn't show up in photos, only mirrors. Kira texted at 11:17 p.m., a line of apology that read like it had been written by committee. She was under stress. She had overreacted. She wanted me to be part of this if I could stop making everything a court case. She said we could meet at a clinic she preferred the next day. She said Dr. H could fit us in. She wrote the full name, Dr. Helena. I searched the clinic name. It existed. It had a website that had been built in 2013 and updated via prayer. The physician list had no Helena. The phone number went to a generic front desk. I asked for Dr. Helena. The receptionist paused and then said, "Do you mean Helene?" I said, "Maybe." She said Helene had retired last year. The line hung for a second while she found a tone that nurses use when they draw blood and tell you to look away. "Are you calling about a paternity issue?" she asked. It was so casual my throat closed. "We don't do those here. You want pathology?" Common Labs. "Do you want their number?" I wrote it down. I texted Kira the address for Common Labs and said I would meet her there at noon. She replied, "Yes." Then 5 minutes later, "Please, can we do the clinic I mentioned? They have better bedside manner." Then 8 minutes after that, "I'm not feeling well. Can we move to Friday?" Then an hour after that, "I started bleeding. I'm scared." A part of me that still loved the idea of her grabbed at the last text like a lifeline. Another part laid it next to the table of elevator entries and the dried cookies and asked for a new lifeline. I wrote, "If you are bleeding, go to the ER. I'll meet you there." She wrote, "No, it stopped. I just need rest." She wrote, "Don't make this worse." I slept like someone who has to stage a server failover at 6, which is to say, badly and in fragments. The next morning, 2 emails arrived before the sun figured out how to bounce properly off the bay. The first was from building management. It stated that Unit 4712 had been fined for repeated after-hours guest access violations and suspended from amenity privileges for 30 days. It reminded residents in bold that courtesy fobs were not for social use. It thanked me by name for my contribution to community safety. I wanted to vomit and to forward it to everyone I had ever dated. The second email was from the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, sent via the Woman in Navy. It was a formal intake confirmation for a complaint regarding a licensee named Sebastian, alleging violations of ethical standards regarding client relationships and building code of conduct. It had an assigned investigator. It had a timeline request. It copied her law firm address, which grew 3 lines into a block that suggested she had time to make this tedious for him in exactly the way he would hate. At noon, I went to Common Labs anyway. Waiting rooms always level us. The chairs were bad. The magazines were old. A television tried to sell me pharmaceuticals designed for 3 different organs I didn't want to think about. Kira did not come. At 12:70, I texted her a photo of the check-in kiosk and a simple question mark. She wrote back a photo from a bed, her leg in the frame, a blanket pulled to the knee, a wristband visible. "ER," she wrote. I asked which hospital. She didn't answer. I called 2 nearby ERs and asked if Kira L. had checked in. Both said no. One asked if I was her husband. I said no. The woman on the phone said, "Then we can't tell you even if she had." It was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in days. I went home. I stared at the manila envelope like it might hatch. I forwarded everything to a cheap attorney, a colleague recommended for when you want someone who doesn't care about your feelings but cares about deadlines. He replied in 20 minutes with a retainer agreement and a bullet list of best practices that read like a marriage between common sense and threat assessment. Don't respond to provocation. Don't agree to meet alone. Ask for all medical documentation to be sent directly to counsel. If any paperwork for temporary support arrives, do not panic. Forward immediately. He wrote, "The law is slow, but so are people who rely on panic." It made me feel better and worse at once. At 5, a text came from a number I didn't recognize. It was short. "I'm not pregnant. Don't contact me again." I stared until the words split into their own small lines. The number was new, or at least new to me. I copied it into a search. It linked to a Google Voice account. The profile had a name that wasn't hers. I said nothing. I sent the screenshot to my attorney. He replied, "Archived. I half laughed at the idea that you can archive a life." I didn't hear from Kira for 4 days. In the vacuum, other noises came through. Management installed a new turnstile in the garage with a very satisfying click. An email congratulated me on nominating myself for the safety subcommittee, which I had not done. Mateo claimed it must have been my ghost. Dario told me, outraged and amused, that someone had tried to bribe the night concierge with a watch in exchange for the elevator logs. When the concierge refused, the man offered to do a boat day. The concierge asked if that came with gas. On the 5th day, Kira left a voice note. The first 5 seconds were empty, but for breath. Then she said she had lost the baby and that it was my fault and that she hoped I choked on the money I cared about more than love. It would have hurt more if the next message hadn't come from someone else entirely. The woman in Navy emailed to say, politely, that she had filed for legal separation. She thanked me for my help. She said she had reported Sebastian to his brokerage, who had placed him on leave pending investigation. She said she wouldn't ask me to testify unless necessary. She asked for one more thing. If I happened to have any evidence of contemporaneous posts or messages that placed Sebastian and Kira together when he had claimed to be elsewhere, it would make her life easier. I sent the screenshots without commentary because commentary felt like seasoning on meat already overcooked. Weeks have a way of congealing around embarrassments. The building moved on because buildings always do. The dog on 2308 kept barking at nothing. The pool bar pretended it was Rome. Kira disappeared from our corridors. I learned from Mateo that management had issued a no trespass order after she was seen trying to access the elevator without a resident escort and then insulting the security staff when they told her no. She did not live in the building. That was a rule. The rule had learned to care about itself. I kept waiting for an aftershock. Instead, life arrived like a text you don't expect that turns out to be a logistics question. My colleague Rena asked if I could help her friend move on Saturday. I said yes because saying yes to things that were not my life felt medicinal. The friend had a dog with the weight and optimism of a bowling ball. He bumped my knees, then leaned his whole existence against my shins like gravity was a favor he was returning. His name, disastrously, was Donut. The universe is not subtle. Rena said he needed a place to land while her friend found a pet-friendly lease. I said of course. He stayed, and no one asked for him back. Donut pulled me into mornings. He made me meet my neighbors at ground level instead of in lobbies. He made it harder to go to war inside my head. He also made me likable to the doormen and women in a way charts never could. People will forgive a lot if you have a dog who looks at them like they're a sunset. The call from my attorney came 3 weeks after the meeting, after the days unspooled their sameness into something that looked like calm. He said a complaint for temporary support had been drafted and never filed. He said a letter from a clinic had arrived addressed to me. He asked if I wanted him to open it. I said yes. He read the content. It was a notice that a patient named Kira had declined further prenatal care and that no records could be released without her authorization. It was polite and neutral and made of silence. He said there was nothing else pending. He said I could live now. I walked downstairs with Donut and handed Mateo a bag of the good coffee beans I buy for people who have saved my life without saying they were trying to. You need to stop bringing gifts, he said. You're going to make everyone else here look like they don't care about me. I am very invested in your caffeine levels, I said. You keep my world spinning. Your world keeps itself spinning, he said. I just make sure the doors open and close. Dario came out from the back with a new policy memo printed on pink paper that made it look like a school dance announcement. It said courtesy fobs would now be limited to vendor use only. It said after-hours access required prior registration and staff escort. It said violators would be fined and that habitual violators would lose amenity privileges. It said security footage could be reviewed by residents of the unit in question upon request and with appropriate redactions. It looked like a building that had learned from itself. Sebastian didn't disappear from the building the way TV would write it. He faded at the edges, like a stain worked on with a good soap. The pool bar didn't laugh as loudly when he showed up. The watch on his wrist got smaller. The group of minnows found a new shark. He tried twice to catch my eye in the lobby and give me the kind of look men use to make peace with their mirrors. I didn't return it because my mirror had new plans. The woman in navy walked through twice with a movers company and a clipboard. The second time, her ring was gone. The third time, her name came off the mailboxes. Kira posted less, then more, then less again. She DM'd once to say she regretted how things went and that maybe in another world we could have been the parents we deserved. I didn't reply. In this world, I was the parent of a creature who ate socks and snored like a small broken machine, and that felt like enough responsibility to practice on. I thought the last twist would be a letter. It wasn't. It was a conversation I didn't expect in a place I never wanted to cry. I was in the mailroom, audibly losing an argument with a roll of packing tape when the woman in navy appeared at my shoulder and took the tape and cut it like she'd fought more stubborn things. Settlement, she said, as if we were in the middle of a dialogue we had maintained in silence. He admitted to conduct unbecoming. License suspended for 6 months, probation after, brokerage cut him loose. Condo is in my name via the trust. He'll move out by Friday. I'm sorry, I said. It seemed insufficient and too large. Don't be, she said. I like not paying for someone else's yachts. She handed me the tape back like a baton at the end of a relay. You did the right thing, she said. I'm sure it didn't feel like it. It almost never does. She started to leave, then stopped. By the way, she said without turning, If anyone sends you a cease and desist for speaking at a building meeting, forward it to me. I collect those." She left before I could laugh. The silence that followed was not empty. It was the kind you get when a server room is correctly cooled and everything hums at the right pitch and the lights blink the way lights blink when they mean yes. If you're waiting for a scene where Kira returns with a confession and we hug and the world becomes a place where people are self-aware and kind, I have only the world we have. She sent another message 6 weeks later to say she was moving to LA, that Miami had too many ghosts. She asked if I wanted to say goodbye. I wrote back 2 words that had become my default answer to everything that tried to lure me into a story with no evidence it would end where I needed it to. I wrote, "No thanks." Donut had no opinion on ghosts. He had opinions on weather, bacon, and the best sun patches on my floor. He lay in those patches while I did the paperwork to make the building safer and my life boring in the ways that matter and interesting only when my feet choose to leave my apartment and take me somewhere I haven't ruined by thinking too hard. Sometimes, late, when the pool has stopped reflecting anything but the moon, I stand by the glass and look up at 47. There's a new couple in 12. They keep their terrace lights warm and their music low. Once, I saw them dancing in their kitchen, small steps, no phones. I wanted to catalog it and decided not to. Not everything needs to be a log to be true. But when the elevator opens and someone without a fob tries to slide in after me, I put my palm up and hold the door and say, politely, "Not after hours!" And the person backs up and laughs it off, and we both go where we were going anyway, and the building remembers the rule we wrote for it. I don't know if I'm happier. I know I'm less lost. There's a difference. Happiness has a way of posing for photos. Being less lost is ugly and quiet and looks like you keeping receipts you hope never to use. If you're lucky, they become stories that help someone else say no to a lie before it grows teeth. If you're waiting for the part where I renounce logs and become a man of vibes, I'm sorry to disappoint. I still love a timestamp. I still think the world is kinder when reality lines up with the record. But I have learned something I didn't know when Kira knocked on my door with chlorine in her hair and a sentence in her mouth that broke a month into a year. I learned that proof is not God. It's a handrail. It won't love you back. It will keep you from falling while you find a place where love would be allowed to try. 3 months after the meeting, Nora asked me to chair the safety subcommittee. I said I would if we could rename it something less bleak. We called it the Good Nights Committee. We did small things with large consequences. We fixed the door that slammed. We added bike racks. We installed a camera above the only corner of the garage not already watched. We taught the concierge desk to say no in 5 languages. We wrote fines that made people think twice before inviting chaos upstairs. The building felt like a place where you could sleep and wake and find your coffee still hot against your palm as you walked to the elevator. On the morning the state finally posted Sebastian's license status as suspended, Mateo slid a newspaper across the counter. Yes, an actual paper. No, he didn't stop laughing about buying it just for theater. He had circled the legal notices section and read like a teacher pleased that someone had studied. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I took the paper and rolled it under my arm and went to work feeling like a character in a film where justice is not perfect, but it has good hair and shows up 5 minutes late with a sandwich. That night, I stood on my balcony with Donut beside me, his head tilted at a sound I couldn't hear. A breeze rose from the bay and brought with it the city's semi-clean exhale. Somewhere, a blender. Somewhere, music that would annoy me if it got closer. Somewhere, a person telling a story that will either become theirs or eat them alive. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Rena. It said, "Proud of you? Dinner tomorrow?" It had a photo of a dog bed she thought Donut would love. It looked ridiculous and exactly right. I wrote yes. Then I put the phone face down and watched the building breathe with access cards and neighbors and 100 small lives trying to be less alone. If you were in front of me now and you asked me what I'd do differently, I would say I would begin with the same questions and end with fewer words. I would ask for the clinic name on the first knock. I would bring donuts to the front desk sooner and shame later. I would tell the version of me that wanted to be hugged by anyone saying pregnant that love is not the same as contact, and that you can ask for documentation and still be kind, and that being the villain in someone else's caption is better than being the fool in your own. And if you told me you were in something you couldn't name because you were afraid being precise would make it real, I would sit with you in the lobby of whatever your life looks like and put a folder on the table and ask you to mark what you know and what you don't. And I would tell you that proof won't catch you when you fall, but it will give you a place to stand while you decide where to go. What would you have done the night she said she was pregnant? Push for a DNA plan on the spot or wait and build a paper trail first? Tell me in the comments what your threshold is for proof before you confront. If this kept you listening, hit like so. If finds the next person staring at a blurry sonogram and wondering if it's real, share it with someone who needs a handrail tonight, and subscribe for more stories where the logs talk back.